And then, I don't know, thinking through what's the sort of differences between these different approaches, what kind of forms of innovation they have. Anyway, let's hear from everybody here on the floor. Would anyone like to start off? Has anyone ever patented it? Could you introduce yourself?
I'm Amod, working with General Electric for IPR. The question is very specific to protection, especially for the grassroots innovations. And the question here is, when we are enabling grassroots innovation, it's for common good. In terms of rewards and recognition, what we can offer to an innovator definitely needs that, but my personal feel is, will protecting him from a patent regime or by utilizing patenting regime would be useful, or it would be a reverse inertia, or it will have a reverse inertia on actually translating the good created by a local innovator towards the larger community or social growth. Maybe you can have your thoughts around this.
So we don't fall into a question and answer dynamic. Does anyone have any other points to add? I really like this.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Shamnad and I'm doing my doctorate research in IIM itself, and I'm working in Prof. I mean, this is a thought that has always concerned me when we talk of patents for grassroots innovators. And you brought up the right point, appropriation. And the next question that always comes to me, appropriating what? I mean, so we have, instead of talking about kind of return, non-material and material. My concern always with grassroots innovators is, and something that has come out in our discussion is, you might file a patent. But a grassroots innovator, I mean, an Apple and a Sony can go on a patent fight and you can fight it out. And an IIM will help you file a patent and, but if there is a claim, say there is a counter claim by a firm, how long are you going to fight that legal battle? And it's not about the patent, it's about the grassroots innovator. So what is more valuable for him? Is it a patent or is it reciprocity or attribution in some other form? Is reward a better mechanism? I mean, I remember the example was about Basheer when we talked about that Mahatma Gandhi in 1920 announced a big reward for designing a charkha. He said, I'll give you, in these specifications, if you make a design, I'll give you 1 lakh rupees. That is in 1920, 1 lakh amount. And the idea there was, you are eligible, if you, suppose you get the design right, you are eligible to win 1 lakh, provided you share with everyone. If you file a patent and keep it to yourself, you don't get the award. So, it's just out for discussion out here. Sometimes I feel that, when we restrict ourselves to IPRs, and also, since Mr. Shamsheed brought this point, it is very, very, very particular. Informal and formal is very different. But when we are trying to protect the informal, we are seeking help of the formal system. So, is there any other means? Can rewards and attribution be directed to the grassroots innovator at the earliest possible stage? Because the way I look at it, why do you incentivize someone? You incentivize someone either for him to come out with another innovation, or that sort of a motivation, or to reward him. But if you restrict yourself just to filing patents, hoping that he'll get more rewards in later, I guess the formal system is too deeply entrenched in moving around these patents, and maybe the rewards for the grassroots innovator might get delayed, which may not be the right thing. That's just a thought.
Can I ask?
Sure.
I'm Nitin with National Innovation Foundation. There have been 2 cases where we have received calls from innovator, one from Kerala and another from Bihar. For the technologies of both of them, we had filed patents, not yet granted, under process. They are not economically strong. So what they said, there are people who are copying their technologies. Now the patent has been filed, but it has not been granted. So the people who are copying, they themselves are not well-to-do. So in such a case, what can be planned so that these things can be taken care of. Like technology commerce was one option, but here the inventor is not trying to, share his IP. So what can be done in this?
Can you talk a bit about partnership models? And so you had mentioned earlier today that maybe we should separate inventor from business model to entrepreneurs to marketers. And so then let's say, for example, I don't want to keep picking on Tata here, but he's sitting right up front. And so then let's say that I have an invention that Tata is interested in, and I approach Tata or Tata approaches me, and we decide to go forward on some new fertilizer that's way better than Tata's existing, custom-made fertilizer. And so Tata, I don't know how that relationship works, or what are some of the different scenarios that can happen, especially because we're assuming that the inventor probably isn't a multi-skilled individual, or doesn't have an MBA, and doesn't have a marketing degree.
I'll put a follow-up on that. Coming from the point of view of partnerships again, one of the key aspects for any investor or even any aid giver in such kind of partnerships would be whether the innovation or the idea is sustainable or not, or whether it will give a sustainable benefit or an impact to the society or not. So, where does your appropriation come into play in that? One part of it is that because of appropriation, the inventor actually thinks that probably I'll be able to save my IP and use it for my own benefit, which is actually not a win-win for the society. The other part is that when he shares it with the whole society, the impact is there, but probably the financial benefit for the innovation is not there. So it's in some cases it's a win-win, in some cases it's not.
I think we'll just quickly just respond to it because it's 15 questions. We just forget which ones were raised. So we can just very quickly. So I think those the last set of questions first, very quickly. I think it's it's an absolutely important question to ask. Given that if you really want to look at a very healthy innovation ecosystem, then we need to look at a diverse set of players who would enter it. And not all of them would have the same set of skill sets, so you need to have linkages, you need to have partnering between the inventor, the innovator, the entrepreneur, whoever it is, unless all of them, of course, combine in one firm or entity, which we're not seeing too much of. I think even within the formal sector, and if you look at pharmaceutical innovation, it's a classic example. You're actually seeing a diversification and a segregation of these roles. So the small biotechs are the ones inventing the molecule, the big pharma are the ones actually taking it to trial, spending all the money and getting the drug out, and marketing it. So you see this role playing dividing up very frequently within the formal sector, but you see this, and within the informal sector, I think you'll see this playing out much more largely because the person who comes up with the creative ideas may not be the same person that wants to take it to the market. So if you look at, and you ask the question, okay, so if I'm a grassroots innovator and I really want to talk to the formal sector of an idea that I have, so I have two routes, right? One is I could just patent it, and we solve the problems with patenting, which is, from a negotiation point of view, it's far better for me because I have a public document. I don't need to worry about secrecy. I don't need to worry about the fact that you might rip me off, that you might not give me adequate value, because there's a public document there that's documenting the fact that I'm the inventor with a sort of government stamp. And so the negotiation, I think, would have less transaction cost, would be better. Whereas if you didn't have the patent and you were negotiating it purely as a secret, then how much do you divulge? What kind of agreements do you enter into? You need thorough lawyering in that process. The transaction cost is just large, per transaction. If you're going to rely on a model where we're expecting that these ideas will be taken and developed by the formal sector one-on-one after going through this intensive process of really negotiating, and Anil may have more experience here, but in terms of these one-off negotiations, I think are good, might get you a result, but not really optimal from the point of view of transaction cost, and also from the point of view of the fact that if you look at a number of cases within the formal sector, particularly within Bollywood, almost every day someone takes a script and gets ripped off, right? And the cases filed, every month there's a case, and so you find that frequently happening because what is the guarantee that that you have that the law will really protect you in saying that, well, this was your secret and this person really ripped you off. And ties in with your question of really litigation costs. Because one part is the patenting cost, which as I explained is huge if you want a really strong patent with well-drafted claims. One is your patent attorney cost, but your bigger cost is really enforcement costs. If you're really going to go to enforce, you're really going to go to court, and court means not just one forum, you have multiple forums because you have appeal after appeal. Are you willing to battle it out that long, then there's a significant cost involved there. And that brings me to the next question that you would pose, and I think it's a very important one. Could prices really help here? And within the formal sector, we have alternative innovation regimes that are now propping up in the literature and otherwise, and prices are a large part of that discussion, predominantly because people have used prices for ages. It's not new, right? I mean, and you gave the great example of Gandhiji himself using it. So could you use prices to really spur innovation within the sector? And I think that's a very valuable thought, except that, could you have it catering to all the potentially new creative ideas coming out of this sector? Because prices are much easier when you have a definitive problem in mind, like Gandhiji, I want a chakra, design it. But prices may not be as appropriate for open-ended innovation. Somebody just comes up with a crazy new idea. Without an initial question being posed or initial pricing, this is a technological problem, we want a solution. And then of course valuing prices, right? How much value do you attribute to new ideas within the price format? How much do you reward? What is the value of the reward? And to that extent, I think the distinction between, what are grassroots innovators really after? And again, that's a tough question to ask because the grassroots innovator is not one person, or the informal innovator is not one person, but these are multiple diverse personalities who might be motivated in very different ways. So is the motivation really attribution? If the motivation really is attribution, then patents are a super expensive way to attribute. It's really a suboptimal instrument of attribution, if attribution is all you're looking at. And then how do you design attribution mechanisms, right? If attribution is really what you're after. Because they want some, and I know that at one of the conferences that I was, Professor Gupta also spoke about, within the IP debates, for a large part people spoke of the natural rights theory. Now, of course, most of them speak of it as an economic instrument, but there's still a strong natural rights, that I'm the creator, I'm the inventor, there's some moral value in giving me a right as a patent right because I've come up with this new creation for society. Now, would that hold good in this context with a different moral flavor, which is that these are really people who are not economically well off, and if they have creations of their own, should we really be giving some sort of a legal right as a mechanism of source, somewhere further social equity, etc. I think that might be an important question to ask. So I think it throws up all these very, very interesting dynamics, and the more questions and possibly answers we have here, and Adrian may have more thoughts on this.
Very many. Before we go around to the next ones, I mean, we seem to be approaching. I just want to throw a few questions in from a quite economic view of innovation, actually, quite conventional economic view about incentivizing innovators and appropriating. But listening to just the discussions this morning and looking at the honeybee database, it doesn't seem to be that there's a lack of innovativeness. It's the kind of diffusion, and it's the kind of getting these ideas out and practiced widely by people. So that really, perhaps we need to think about incentivizing diffusion rather than innovation per se. Now, diffusion itself obviously involves innovative aspects. The first time I use a new device or engage in a new process, it's very innovative for me. I have to learn as well. And one good way of learning is from copying other people and seeing how they do it. So that leads to my second question. It's about, is there anything wrong with copying, actually? Maybe it's contrary, but maybe what we're concerned about is enclosure of the technology commons. That's the real issue, perhaps. That's the kind of question. And then in forming partnerships to try and make all of that happen, we have to remember that sometimes there are power relations involved. Very different. People who are coming into these partnerships are in very different places. I was really struck by what someone said this morning about how important it is to have face-to-face interaction and engagement and building up trust. And maybe that means a kind of decentralisation approach to us. So the very, really tricky issues coming out from this relatively straightforward, well, what's already a tricky set of questions around what's the best kind of innovation regime for the grassroots. And at what point does the application of certain regimes mean that they stop becoming grassroots innovations? It's simply feeding up into other innovation systems away from the grassroots. We should not say there's anything wrong with that at all, it's more part of the process. I think you have to hand up here.
Well, attribution in science is, I think, somewhat different, and especially in sectors like biotechnology, bioscience and biotechnology, the line is very fuzzy. So, attribution in science is by citation, it's by reputation, so you have citation chain. You don't get money for it, but then you are recognized. That's one spanner. So, I want to ask a question. Now in Sri Lanka, the traditional medical systems, the Ayurvedics, are literally dying out. Western system has percolated all over the country. So the first choice is to go to Sri Lanka has free medicine within limits. And so all the Palm-leaf manuscripts, many of the Palm-leaf manuscripts, the kids don't know what the father did. Is being attacked by white ants. There's some people selling to tourists, saying this Buddha's word or some sort of thing. And so we decided to scan and put all those things in line, online. And we have a grant from the National Science Foundation. And the first line was medical text. Then the question came across of what you said, secrecy. I think it's called Gurumushti, right? And Sri Lanka also same thing. So we have to then con partly that this is for the greater good and so on, and that your son is not following it. And in honesty, we could not give a real answer to this. Because the next generation will not have it. Either the son will not learn it, or before that the white ants will eat it. So what would you do in such a case?
I would like to respond to the debate that's taking place, which is very interesting. And since we raised this debate 24 years ago, when nobody was talking about IP in this country for the matter any country. Neither CBD was around, nor WTO was around. And patents for the poor seemed an anathema. Somebody said how crazy it could be that patents can help poor. But I'll begin with where Susan just left. In our walks over 5,500 to 6,000 kilometers in the last 15 years, we haven't found many young leaders. So already a vote of no confidence has been issued by the young generation on this list. Shanta, whether we like it or not, young people don't want to remain poor. They have seen their parents who are very kind, very generous, very communitarian, and they think that the modern world is not respected enough. So the answer is not that we want to do away with that feeling. The answer is to invent modern instruments to sustain that spirit of generosity and sharing and compassion. And to us it seemed that using the instruments of IP without impairing the people-to-people learning was one way. The licensing that we have done so far, 1/3 of that, about 20 out of 60, or 68, whatever, 23 out of 68, were done in technologies where patents were not granted. In some cases, were not applied. The question arises, why did these entrepreneurs pay money to acquire the rights of manufacture and marketing something for which there was no protection? Their argument, we asked some of them, why did you copy? You could have copied and you would do nothing legally. They said, sir, this fellow has done so much, you are trying to help this person. Through you we came to know, why should we take it away just like that? If we can contribute something, we like to contribute. In other words, the ethical standards of small entrepreneurs, I have realized over the years, are much higher than the large corporations. And that's wonderful. It's an empirical evidence. It's not one case, not two cases, 22 to 23 cases where we have licensed technologies without having an IP. So, while I agree that too small, entrepreneurs are small, the innovators are small.
But not to the larger firms.
No, but now coming to large. When we had set up this company, we set up this company with Future Group, Idea India Ka Innovation Private Limited. I am one of the directors, Ashwini Bayani, Kishore Bayani's daughter, is one of the directors. The first question Kishore said, we will invest 20 crores in this company, tranches of 5 crore each. And I will not give any equity, only intellectual property. Future Group will invest the financial capital. And we are not obliged to sell this product only through Future Group. Wherever we find good market, we will give it. Because Future Group's share in the total sales of any product is not more than 10 to 15%. So if you restrict to future group, we will only restrict to 10% market. So they were very clear that we will buy, when they invest, future venture capital invest in future in this company, they will not invest to market it only through their own channel. Very, very open lot. But they said, we will only deal with technologies where we have IP. Reason? If they want to enter into subsidiary contract with the manufacturer and marketing company, that company would not like to get into dispute with somebody else who could get into problems and copying and so on and so forth. So the IP comes to help only when the elephants fight. You understand? The elephants need to fight on a turf where rules of the game are obvious and explicit. They don't want to fight on a turf where ambiguity reigns as to who owns this property. So we want to get into elephant fight. All right? We have no hesitation. We want to get into that fight because only valuable things are fought for. Nobody fights for things which are not valuable. You understand? So fight is the one proof that it is valuable. Have you ever fought with somebody something which is not valuable? Why would you fight? Third point. Gandhiji in 1929, when he gave that announcement, he said you can file patent, but you have to assign it to the committee, Khadi Grab Samiti, which was going to give the award of 7,700 pounds, which in today's term will be 10 crore rupees. We don't have a single award giving 1 crore rupees today. But in 1939, he announced 7,700 pounds. But he did not object to the patents. He said you can file, but you have to assign it. So the technology acquisition fund that we have set up, GTIL, Grassroots Technology Acquisition Fund, last year 88 lakh rupees, which is about how much? About $200,000 roughly, little less. So $150,000 was paid to the inventors to buy the rights of these technologies to make them open source or licensable to small entrepreneurs at low cost. So we are solving that problem. That the open domain, the open source is being expanded. And we have 56 technologies in our database. We are willing to provide to anybody who wants to take it to the market at no cost or low cost. India would like to be, and that's our ambition, the largest provider of open source technologies in the world. I was in China because I am trying to persuade Chinese also. They should also set up such a fund. India and China and eventually other Malaysia and other Asian countries should create a new model of development where state will pay for it. In some cases, market might pay for it. But the subsidy, innovator will not subsidize the societal cost of that. You see the point? If you take away the knowledge of the innovators in commons, in open source, then innovator gets no remuneration. He gets a lot of recognition, sure. But you have to eat at the end of the day. You have to make your younger children aspire for a life which is honorable and dignified. And younger people don't want to remain poor, rightly or wrongly. They want benefits. They won't get into that. Dadabhai Khobaragade, whose variety has diffused to 100,000 acres, HMT variety of paddy, his son doesn't want to get into this business full time. He, at the age of 78 years, still takes the support we are setting up. We told him he can set up a company. He said, Ankur Seed Company, Nagpur, multiplied the seed, made millions out of it, didn't share a penny. What do I do? Because there was no protection for this variety. There was no protection for this variety. The HMT variety, the university purified it and said it is a different variety. We did a DNA fingerprinting with CCMD and found that there was absolutely no difference. On 17 markers, the variety that the university released is same as HMT. We have scientific evidence. Best lab in the country has done this research. So there is no problem, but how can we enforce this right? Because there was no right to begin with. So please appreciate that in the games, in the learning process, there is no question. Patents are not coming to bear. And cost for us, all the attorneys, Anand and Anand, Surana and Surana, all the top companies of this country don't charge us fees. Don't charge us fees. They charge 50,000 rupees.
But I had a serious question on quality.
Well, quality may vary case to case.
I'm keeping quiet for the time.
Yeah,
I'm listening to the two pro IP people.
But the fact is that KLG Gates company in Boston also worked for us without fees. Not only in India, in Boston. And we hope that we will have a network of attorneys around the world. We have got many PCT applications now, which have to go in national phase. And surely we will need attorneys who will take them into national phase because local translation, all of that has to be done. We are genuinely wishing that market and non-market, state and non-state, open and closed, all options will be tried, like the example who said, so long as cat catches the mice, it doesn't matter what color the cat is. We are very pragmatic people. We cannot impose our ideology on the people. We are willing to try anything which makes a difference to the life of the people. And we are committed to innovators, but sometimes small entrepreneurs come and tell us, sir, why are we not protecting our rights also? We are also your people. Which means that we want them to access this technology at low cost, so we have for this fund. But the question that I'm asking you all is, patent is only one small part of incentives. I think we should not get, the discussion should not restrict to only patents. Think of new instruments. Think of new ways of recognizing. I mean, there is not a single lesson in any textbook till date, anywhere, at least not in India. How do we get these lessons in textbooks? How do we get notices on railway station? 60% people are covered by Indian Railways. Every station should have innovators of that region. Their big posters should be there, so that when people get out of the train or go board the train, they know about creative people of that region. Why can't we talk about many more ways of creating awareness about the creative people? Why are we getting 560 patent is a small fraction of the 160,000 knowledge bit that we have. 12,000 bits of knowledge, which is an open source Srishti, 12,600. 500 is nothing, not even 1% of that. So why are we just getting logged in IP only? Let us think about other incentives, other ways of it.
Okay, we've got 20 minutes before break. I guess there's a question though, whether you can pick and choose and be experimental in the way that you want, or whether some of these measures are much more powerful and close down space for others. So you mentioned the example of the manufacturing subcontractors who are worried about manufacturing something without a patent because they're worried there'll be litigation later. That seems to me that it's closing down the space for innovation.
But let us say growing ladies from the
maybe that's a good point to bring the national.
No, patents were controversial in India because they were instruments of monopoly, not because they rewarded, they were increasing the transaction cost for innovation in pharmaceutical industry, for example. That's how the Indian Patent Act 1970 was changed. And then it was turned upside down because the large pharma or large companies even in other areas like electronics and so on, etc., or in biotech, wanted actually stronger monopolies as far as this is concerned. So let's firstly, we haven't even used the word monopoly once in this whole discussion. Neither Shamnad has used it, nor anybody else has used it. Huh? Or you assume it that, the patents are only have to assume one form of monopoly. That is all, there always will be monopoly.
And economists will tell you that patents are not necessarily monopolies. You still have
I think, I think the strong IPR movement has been towards building stronger monopolies. There's no doubt about that as far as it's concerned. Otherwise, from the struggle that we saw from 80s to 90s in this particular country and all over the world, would not have been carried out at all. Then we would not have needed TRIPS at all. The movement against TRIPS was precisely for that particular purpose as one. And I think the second instance, I think Anil brought it out himself, people were willing to pay for the know-how. Because I think we assume that the commercialization can occur merely because there is an idea. You need complementary assets. Capabilities are needed. And that's why people are willing to pay for know-how. Know-how payment is very different from paying for monopolies. And I think I am all for paying for know-how. I pay for teacher. I want to learn in a training session, I go and pay. But that's open source, that's commons approach. Teacher teaches in the way, particularly, he doesn't hold it as a monopoly. I think let's bring the monopoly into discussion. Whether do we want grassroots innovations to replicate monopolies and deprive rest of the communities? No, I think Anil has followed a model which is correct. People to people copying is perfectly fine. Only when the elephants wants to appropriate us, we will fight them. No, I have no quarrel with that particular kind of philosophy as far as concerned. So I think, and finally, if really the idea is that other incentives you're looking for, then I think particularly you're looking for the way so that the impact is felt through diffusion. The point which Adrian brought it up. So then let's think about that. How do we actually incentivize diffusion?